American Literature, page 276, Amigo Brothers, an adapted story by Piri Thomas. Words to know. Literary terms. Colloquial language, the everyday language people use when talking to friends. Conflict, a struggle or fight that a character undergoes. Internal conflict is conflict within a person. The character struggles to make a difficult decision. External conflict. A character struggles against something outside himself or herself, such as society, nature, or another person. Dialogue is the conversation between characters. Omniscient point of view. The author tells the thoughts and feelings of all the characters. The omniscient narrator uses the third person, words like he, she, and they, and the narrator stays outside of the story. Selection vocabulary. Lightweight, a weight class for boxers from 127 to 135 pounds. Bouts, or fights or matches. Slugger is a hitter. Division is, in boxing, it's a group or a class of boxers. Draw is a tie. The fighters have equal points at the end of the match. Sparring is boxing. Amigo is a friend. An amigo brother is a best friend. Champion is the winner of a match or series of matches. Challenger, in boxing, the one who fights the champion. Referee is the person who judges the match. Antonio Cruz and Felix Varga were both 17 years old. They were such close friends that they felt like brothers. They had known each other since they were children. They had grown up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan in the same apartment building. Antonio was thin and had light skin. Felix was short and had a heavier, dark body. Antonio's hair was always falling over his eyes. Felix wore his dark hair in an afro. Both boys had a dream. Each wanted to be the lightweight champion of the world. Every chance they had, the boys worked out. Before the sun came up, they would go running along East River Drive. They wore sweatshirts, short towels around their necks, and handkerchiefs around their foreheads. While some kids were into negative stuff on the street, Antonio and Felix were positive. They slept, ate, rapped, and dreamed positive. The boys had a bigger collection of fight magazines than anyone. They had a scrapbook of torn tickets from every boxing match they had ever been to. They could answer any question about a fighter. Both boys had fought many bouts for their community. They had won medals, gold, silver, and bronze. Each boy had his own fighting style, too. Antonio's thin body and long arms and legs made him the better boxer. Felix's short body with its heavy muscles made him the better slugger. When the boys practiced with each other, it had always been a tough fight. Now a big day was coming. The boys would fight each other in the division finals for the boys' club. The fight was August 17th, 2 weeks away. The boys still ran together along East River Drive, but even when they were joking with each other, they could feel a wall going up between them. One morning, they met as usual for their workout. They fooled around with a few punches in the air, slapped skin, and then ran along the edge of the dirty East River. After they had run a mile or so, Felix said, "Let's stop a while, bro. I think we both got something to say to each other." Antonio nodded. They couldn't act as though nothing unusual was going on, not when two buddies were going to be competing with each other in a few short days. Antonio said, "It's about our fight, right?" "Yeah, right," Felix said. Antonio's external conflict is with Felix. What is their conflict? "Ever since I found out it was going to be you against me, I've been thinking about it," Antonio said. "I've been awake at night. I've been pulling punches on you, trying not to hurt you." "Same here," Felix said. We are both good fighters and we both want to win, but only one of us can win. There ain't going to be no draw in this fight." Antonio nodded. "Yeah, we both know that in the ring, the best man wins. Friend or no friend, brother or no brother." "Let's promise something right here," Felix said. "When we get in the ring, it's going to be like we never met. We got to be like two strangers who want the same thing. and only one of us can have it. See what I mean?" Antonio smiled. "See. Yes, I know. No pulling punches. We go all the way." Notice how Peary Thomas uses dialogue to tell what is happening in the story. Here, he is using dialogue to explain the external conflict between the boys. Some of the words the author uses in the dialogue are colloquial. "There ain't gonna be no draw in this fight" is an example of colloquial language. "Yeah, that's right," Felix said. "And listen, don't you think it's a good idea if we don't see each other until the day of the fight? I'm going to stay with my Aunt Lucy in the Bronx. I can use Gleason's gym for working out. My manager says he's got some sparring partners who fight like you." Antonio said, "Watch yourself, Felix. I hear there's some pretty heavy dudes up in the Bronx. Be careful, okay?" "Okay," Felix said. "You watch yourself, too." The Amigo brothers were not ashamed to hug each other tightly. The day before the fight passed much too slowly. The boys kept out of each other's way. The night before the big fight, Antonio went up to the roof of his building. He tried not to think of Felix. He thought he had prepared his mind pretty well for the fight, but he wouldn't really know until he got in the ring. He wanted to knock out Antonio quickly so his friend would not get hurt. But up in the South Bronx, Felix went to a movie. He wanted to stop thinking about hitting Antonio's face with his fist. The movie was The Champion with Kirk Douglas. In the movie, the champion was getting beat up. His face was being pounded into raw, wet hamburger. His eyes were cut and bleeding. One eye was swollen. The other eye was almost swollen shut. He was saved only by the sound of the bell. Felix became the champion and Antonio became the challenger. As Felix watched the movie, he began to imagine that he and Antonio are in the movie. He sees himself as the champion. He sees Antonio as the fighter who is challenging Felix's championship title. The champion was bent over. His nose was broken and bloody. The challenger thought he had the champ beat. He hit the champ with the left. The champ came back with a right that exploded into the challenger's brains. Instead of the face on the movie screen, Felix saw Antonio's face. Felix saw himself in the ring. He blasted Antonio against the rope. The challenger fell slowly to the ground. He was a broken, bloody mess. Felix had found how to get himself ready for the fight. It was Felix the champion versus Antonio the challenger. Antonio was still on the roof worrying about the upcoming fight. He wondered what the fight would do to his friendship with Felix. He started having doubts. He cut out the negative thinking real quickly by doing some fancy fighting steps. He filled the night air with fast punches. Felix would not be his amigo brother tomorrow. He would just be another fighter to beat. Like Felix, Antonio hoped to win by knocking his friend out in the first round. In this paragraph, you can almost imagine two people arguing inside Antonio's head. One voice is saying, "You must win. Forget about Felix being your best friend." The other voice is saying, "How can you hurt Felix? Will he still be your amigo brother if you beat him?" This is Antonio's internal conflict. All over the neighborhood, people were interested in the fight. There were posters for the fight in the walls of the stores. Lots of people bet on the fight. They bet everything from a can of soda to real money on the fighter they thought could win. The fight was in Tompkins Square Park. That morning, the park was as busy as a beehive. Workers set up the ring, the seats, and the guest speaker's stand. The fights began shortly after noon, but people started coming into the park much earlier. Community leaders got up to speak. Great boxers who had fought years ago also spoke. At last, it was time for the main event. Felix stepped into one corner as Antonio stepped into the opposite corner. The crowd roared. Antonio and Felix bowed to each other and raised their arms in the air. The referee told the fighters, "No low hits, no punching on the back of the head. Let's have a clean fight." Boing, boing. Round 1. Felix wasted no time. He came quickly up to Antonio with a left punch. Antonio slipped away from the punch. He hit Felix with the 1-2-3 left punches. This series of punches snapped Felix's head back. Felix felt a shock go through his body. He knew not now that Antonio was going to fight his hardest, friend or no friend. Bong! It was the end of the round. Felix walked back to his corner. His ear was still ringing from Antonio's punches. Antonio danced back to his corner. Burns from Felix's gloves had made angry red marks on his ribs. Boing, boing. Round 2. Felix rushed out of his corner like a bull. He gave Antonio a hard right punch to his head. Antonio hit back with quick lefts and rights, giving Felix some painful blows. Felix rushed at Antonio. He made a move with his right fist, then he hit Antonio with his left. But Antonio ducked the blow and hit Felix on the chin. Lights exploded in Felix's head. The crowd went wild as Felix's legs wobbled. He fought off Antonio's punches. Then he came back with a strong right punch that taught Antonio a lesson. This story is told from the omniscient point of view. The author tells the thoughts and feelings of both Felix and Antonio by using the pronoun he. Antonio came back with the left hook. He got Felix in the eye. The pain was a haze in front of Felix's face. He swung out. He couldn't really see Antonio, but the roar of the crowd told him he had knocked Antonio down. Antonio got up, ducked, and threw a right punch that dropped Felix on his back. Felix got up as fast as he could. His head was in a fog. The bell rang. It was the end of the round. In the other corner, Antonio was doing what all fighters do when they're hurt. They sit and smile at everyone. Bong! Round 3, the last round. Up to now, the boys had fought an even fight, but everyone knew there would be no draw. This round was it. This time it was Antonio who came out fast from his corner. Antonio's fist came fast and hard. Felix was pounded against the ropes. The crowd loved it. So far, the two boys had fought with mucho corazon, which means a lot of heart. Both boys punched away. Felix's left eye was tightly closed. Blood poured from Antonio's nose. They fought toe to toe. The crowd was quiet now. The sound of the boys' punches could be heard around the park. The referee could not believe how hard they were fighting each other. Bong, bong, bong! The bell rang, but Felix and Antonio didn't even hear it. They kept on punching. They were out of control. Finally, the referee pulled Felix and Antonio apart. Cold water was poured over the boys. Why do you think Antonio and Felix kept fighting even after the bell rings? What does the author mean when he says they were out of control? The boys looked around. They ran toward each other. The crowd cried out. It looked like the boys were going to try to kill each other. But the fear of the crowd changed to cheers. The two amigos met and hugged. No matter who won, they knew they would always be champions with each other. The announcer got up to speak. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the winner is..." He turned to point to the winner. Suddenly he saw that he was alone in the ring. The two champions had already walked away, arm in arm. Literature practice. Answer these questions on the back of your vocabulary. Number 1. Look at the first line of the dialogue in Amigo Brothers. Felix calls Antonio bro. Find other examples of colloquial language in the dialogue. Question 2. Why do you think the colloquial language makes the dialogue in this story more interesting? What is the conflict between Antonio and Felix? What is their internal conflict? From what point of view is this story being told? How do you know? Why don't the boys stay to find out who won the fight?